Hello and welcome to Monolith Revolution. I'm Alex Radcliffe, CMO of GameFound, and today I'm joined by Giles Planton, Marketing Director and Editorial Director at Monolith, to talk about 4 exciting upcoming campaigns coming to you this year from Monolith. Giles, without spoiling too much about anything just yet, which of the 4 campaigns are you personally most excited about?
Oh, that's a tough one because I would probably hesitate with at least 2 of them, but I would say the first one we'll be talking about.
So the first one. So that means we get to jump into it straight away so people don't have to wait too long to find about your personal most exciting campaign. But effectively, we have 4 campaigns to go over today. We'll be diving into a few, some of which you'd expect to see from Monolith, some of which might be a surprise. But stay tuned with us throughout this event to see what's coming up this year from Monolith. So for our first game in today's event, Giles, you mentioned that this is the one that you were most excited about, so I think you should go ahead and tell us what today's first game is.
Yeah, the first game we'll be talking about will be Champions of Rokugan, which will be a game happening in the pretty famous Legends of the Five Ring universe.
Perfect. And what's the general structure? What's the general gameplay like of this game? How does it work? What's the short overview of it?
Yeah, I would say it's a cooperative game on which each player will be playing a particular clan of Rokugan, which is the name of the setting. You will be playing together just to save the Empire, both from like demons from the Shadowlands, and also for what we could say like inner threat, because like Game of Thrones between the clans, it's like pretty hard sometimes. There's a lot of stuff happening behind the scenes, and so all the players will be together trying to succeed all the different missions they will have, but they will also have a particularly honor track, which will be increasing and upgrading depending on the actions they will be succeeding doing, and also on some objectives they will each have, like secret ones. And at the end of the game, I mean, even if they all win together, there will be one clan which will be more glorified than the other. In like one-shot scenario, it will just be, I would say, a small candy, for the player who wants the more point. But at the same time, if you like doing a whole campaign, because there's campaign in the game, the clan with the most glory point, at the end of the game, will be the one deciding how it will end. So there's like also incentive, like to replay campaign, because you will probably want to see all the ending you can have.
Okay, so it's more focused on just the flavor aspect as far as any one winner.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And you said that you were most excited about this game. What is it that excites you? Is it the theme? Is it the mechanics? What's making this the game that you're most intrigued by?
Yeah, actually, it's both, because that's probably one of the richest universe which were done for gaming. Because I start doing card game with actually Legends of the Five Rings by EOG back then, and
Wow.
I've started RPG almost with Legends of the Five Rings too, because it was both, and it still is, a card game and an RPG. So doing some miniature game is something we wanted to do for a very long time. And Steve Horvath, which was CEO of FFG back then, is also a big Mythic Battle players. So I mean, talking together, we're like, oh, we should really do that, and it was done like just in a few minutes, actually.
Perfect. And before we dive into our next campaign, is there a follower gift on this one?
Yeah, it will talk to many Dragon Clan players, but you will have a Togashi Yokuni exclusive miniature for people following and playing the game on GameFound, actually.
Perfect. Go ahead and check out the campaign, and we'll be right back. So literally earlier in this call, I got to point out that it was your first time doing a cooperative game, but we are right back there with another fully cooperative from the get-go game, and this is Berserk, the board game. Can you tell us a little bit more about, I guess for those who don't know, let's start with a little bit of background around Berserk, and then the board game and the mechanics.
Yeah, sure. So Berserk is a manga which was launched almost 30 years ago, by Kentaro Miura, and we could say it's like the DNA of most of the dark fantasy game you can have, like be it for like Kingdom Death Monster, be it Dark Souls, Elden Ring. I mean, dark fantasy basically was born with Berserk and a few other licenses which were like pretty unknown at the time, but yes, this one is pretty big. It's probably, I think it's something like 42 or 43 now mangas in Japan, with a great, let me do some advertising for something else, Dark Horses Collector, which were like very, very good. Yeah, so it's something which is very, very dark. I mean, it's not something I would read if I was in a bad mood. That seems like it's not a good thing to do. And it's a universe we were really fond of also, and we really wanted to do a game about that. And we had like the perfect opportunity to doing it, so we're very happy with this.
And then as far as the mechanics of it, like what's the general, like I know it's cooperative, but more
Yep.
than that, what is it?
Okay, so it's a scenario and campaign-based games where you will be playing Guts, which is the main hero, and also the band, which is with him. He has a few companions.
Okay.
All of them will have a unique deck of cards that you can play during their turn. And in your turn, you will be able to play 1, 2, or 3 cards, depending on what you want to do. And on all these cards, you will have some attack dice with like different type of dice, stronger one and weaker one. You will have a certain amount of movement and a certain amount of defense, and you will be able to accumulate all these dice and points and be able to spread them during your turn as you want. I mean, if you have like 10 movement points, you can make one movement of 3, and then we're going to do one of 2 after. I mean, you can manage your pool as you want, and you will also have some effect on the card. I mean, each one is unique. And you will do a pile of cards, and the one on the top, which builds the effect you will be able to make. So you have like a lot of, it's a very intuitive and easy system to manage, but you'll have a lot of decision to make during your turn. Also, if you're playing only 1 card, there would be like no drawback during your turn. If you're playing 1, if you're playing 2 cards, you will have 2 points of fatigue. And if you're playing 3 cards, you will have 4 points of fatigue, because you have both a fatigue track and a health point track on your dashboard, and if one of these 2 is going to 0, you're out of the game. So yeah, so thing is, you will really have to decide if you want to push yourself harder and doing more stuff, but bring you closer to being out of the game, or if you just want to be a little more reserved and being able to do something else like after. So it's like a game when it's very easy to be able to play. I mean, in 5 minutes you can know how to play, but you will have a lot of decision to make like every turn of the game, because it's a pretty hard game. I mean, it's not an easy one. It's really a dark vibe, so it's you will be probably outnumbered and outpowered also. So it's a tough one.
So intuitive but challenging.
Yeah.
Now, Berserk has been around, you mentioned already, for over 30 years, inspiration for a lot of dark fantasy. This is the first time being made into a board game. How did that happen? How did you go from, I guess, not making Berserk to making Berserk?
Yeah. I mean, we would said 90% of success is showing up. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, we were just talking with Akusensha, another Japanese society, about it. And we show them what we did for Batman, and
Okay.
they were really surprised by how close it was to the original RP, what we were able to do with miniatures on such a small scale, because usually they're more used, like to big statue, like
Yeah.
yeah, this is very expensive stuff, which help you think board game is not that expensive after all. Uh, so we talk a lot with them. We start to show what we wanted to do. And what was the hardest part with them, that's totally fine for me, is convincing them they will be doing something very truthful to the whole license. Because especially now the first author is dead. Thing is, they're really trying to have his legacy intact, I would say. So anything we're doing from the game is like very, very well looked, by the owners. And we're trying to make something which is like even more truthful than what we did with Batman. So
Cool. And you mentioned the miniatures, which is a good segue to my next question. And I don't know if there have been other manga board games with heavy feature miniatures, but at least on your end, you guys have done a lot of miniatures in a lot of different games. And the answer might be no difference at all, but what's been different as far as trying to approach bringing a manga to life and bringing those miniatures to life? Like, it's a very different style. Like, how have you approached that?
yeah, it was very interesting because, as you said, first, I mean, it's something which was like 30 years of art, and what he did at the beginning is not what he did like 20 years after.
Yeah.
So thing is, we really try to be as close as possible as what you can see in the manga, so people will, will see a lot of poses. They already thought. I mean, it will have a home vibe. I mean, for more people knowing the manga already. But what was very, very hard and different is working on the faces.
Very expressive.
very expressive and pretty flat. You sometimes
Yeah.
you just have some noise. So it was pretty tough, and we had a lot of time. I mean, for sculptors at first, it was like having a few headaches. I mean, it was very hard, to put something which looks like we wanted to. Now we run that, we're really good and very happy with it. But yeah, it was very, very different, as you said, from doing other stuff you could have made. Yeah.
Perfect. And then lastly, is there a follower gift in the campaign?
Not yet, but you'll have one. I mean, before we launch, yeah.
Perfect. And with that, let's go ahead and wrap this up. For our third campaign today, this is actually the one that's launching the soonest and one that you might already be familiar with if you've been paying attention to the games on GameFound. And this is Reichbusters Reloaded. Reichbusters is launching when, Giles?
On April 2nd.
April 2nd. And this is a different one. This is one, again, we have 3 new campaigns we're talking about today. This is one that's already been on the platform you may have had a chance to dive into, but we still want to talk about it because you may have some questions, plus this is an opportunity to get into it a bit more. Which, for the short version before I ask some questions, Reichbusters at its core is effectively a Weird War scenario-based dungeon crawler with a stealth-based system. There's a lot more going on there, but that's the kind of short 2-second pitch on it. But, Giles, this isn't just Reichbusters, this is Reichbusters Reloaded. Can you tell us a bit more about what's changing from the original game?
Yeah, actually, the game was pretty loved, but there was like 2 main, I would say, flaw drawbacks, which were like coming a lot on like BGG and in general feedback from the players, ours included, which was like the noise system was like pretty annoying. And also the loot ones, there were like too many keywords. I mean, so basically what we did was taking all the feedback and make the change people were asking for. So what will be very different from the first game, on the comfort side, I would say, there's less keywords. Everything is directly either on the enemy cards or on your hero dashboards, meaning once you know the rules, you don't have to check them again. Everything you need is like right in front of you. So noise system now, I don't know if you remember the game back then, but you were supposed to roll a die basically anytime
Every
you were
second.
just breathing. Yeah.
Walk into a room, roll a die. Open a door, roll a die. Pick up a thing, roll a die. Everything is rolling dice.
Yeah. So now, I mean, every scenario will start with a certain amount of noise you'll be able to make, and all the action you'll be doing will make a certain amount of noise. Meaning, like if you're just backstabbing someone, obviously you won't make any noise. While if you're trying with some rifle, like to have a few people killed in a room, it will be very different. So you'll have this amount of points will be growing as long as you're still doing noises. And every turn, the tracker, which will be launching the alarm, which will be lowered by 1, which means you're working against time. So thing is, it's still pretty tense because if you're just taking your time, you will launch the alarm anyway. But it lets the player have the choice of how they will be managing, as much infiltration part as they can before having the alarm launch and having like all the swarms of Nazis coming after you. Yeah, anytime you will be entering in a room and you will be killing anyone which will be there, you will have some loot card which will already be on the board. So it's like it speed up a lot how the game is played. The whole hero turn is also very different because before you will have one player, then it was kind of the enemy, etc. Now you've got a common hero turn, so you better have like this A-team feeling of doing some coordination work, and it's also a great way for people to be able just to move in the dungeon, I would say. The other one change is it's a game which is playing with a big deck for people who don't know that. And what really differentiates this game for a lot of like dungeon crawler in general is you can play all your deck in one turn if you want for doing like super cinematic way to play. And back then you will be discarding some card just to have something like just moving or just making an attack. So now you've got a certain amount, which is 2 actually, of action you can do in your turn, which doesn't require any card. So you can then use your card for like doing really, really epic stuff. And after that, I mean, there's like a few other changes, but that's the main part we changed from the game people were used to know.
Perfect. So it sounds like Reichbusters, but more streamlined and more deterministic.
Yeah, I mean, it's less random. I mean, setup is speed up. It's way easier to play. You don't have to catch everything every few seconds. So yeah, I mean, it's
using the same scenarios in the original game or new scenarios entirely?
No, I mean, as we change a lot of stuff on the rules, I mean, all the scenario we'll have will be only new scenarios because it was very important for us also that all players who already played with the old scenario will have like a totally fresh view of everything they can do instead of just redoing what they already did.
Perfect. And speaking of old players, I know you have upgrade packs as far as, updating your original game, but can you tell us a little bit more about how those are structured?
Yeah, sure. So you did right by saying packs because there's two of them. Yeah, actually, the game you will have only one pledge for like newcomers because like everything is inside the pledge. It's not like you've got some core, 7 expansion, and all in etc. You've got everything in the same place. So for people already owning like Project Real, there will be 2 different packs. One which will be for people who already own the all-in, so they will have the upgrade pack for like everything. And there will be a pack in between the normal pledge and this upgrade, which will be including all the stuff which were upgraded, and also all the minis and ties, which were part of the old expansion. For people who just took, the base core pledge, they will be able to like have everything also to play the full possibility of the game.
And then lastly, I know that Monolith has picked up other IPs in the past, but I am curious, what is it about Reichbusters specifically that caught your interest? There's obviously a different level of taking a look at something else that someone has done and being like, that's something we want to do. What caught your attention?
First, we are big lovers of like weird science stuff. And Reichbusters really have also this pulp feeling. We did Conan, obviously, so we like pulp stuff. And Reichbusters really have this pretty unique feeling. I think it's a great way to approach World War II without going to too much serious stuff, I would say, which is something we really didn't want to do. So that was this part which was very interesting. And as Conan, Reichbusters, you have a very heroic feeling when you're playing your character with all the things you can do with your deck. So it was something we really wanted to take on, also because we were players already of the old game, and there was some stuff which were annoying us, and we were like, we would love to do something else with the game, and that's totally what we have done with this one. The theme is really something we loved, and also especially for the time, the miniature and material was very, very good. So it would have been a shame for us to just let that go away, I would say.
I completely agree on all accounts. I have always said, on a personal level, I've never loved World War II modern themes, but I've always loved that shift into the weird war, and as well as the production. Reichbusters was always a game that I thoroughly wanted to love, and I did enjoy it, but it did have some of those issues. So I'm personally very excited to see you not just picking it up, but addressing some of those common complaints. Anyways, with that, let's head on to our final campaign. For Mythic Battles, the role-playing game, we're joined by Shep, the product lead for Mythic Battles. Shep, can you tell us a little bit more about what you do, both in general at Monolith, as well as for Mythic Battles, the role-playing game? Can you give us a little bit of background?
Sure, yeah. My day-to-day is a project manager. I take product from concept to delivery. I've been doing that for Monolith for a couple of RPG lines, starting with Conan, and now moving on to Mythic Battles. But I'm also the sort of rule developer, lead on the creative lead, I guess, for the Mythic Battles RPG itself as well. So yeah, everything from rules development to getting people to do their jobs on time.
Great. And for Mythic Battles, you've had 3 settings now. You've had, obviously the original Pantheon, you've had Ragnarok, you've had Isfet. At what point did you decide to start working on an RPG?
This is probably a good question for you, Gilles.
Yeah. Actually, in Monolith, we are really big board gaming players and RPG players too. And as soon as we had the opportunity of doing the Conan RPG, it was pretty obvious to us that we also need to do one for Mythic Battles because it's such a big universe with all the mythologies we have, and also with all the minis we have for the game. We start even just playing by yourself, doing sort of RPG with, and we were like, just let's do a real RPG, and that's why we start to work with Chap, especially since Conan, because at first we did the Batman RPG, which was the first one we did, and we clearly saw we were a little lackluster, I would say, on the English part of the project, So bringing Shep, who has like a huge amount of experience, especially like at Modifuse before, it was a strong asset with us, and I mean we knew he would lead that like the best possible way, and we're very happy with what he did.
Perfect. Although speaking of, I guess, IP or settings or whatnot, what settings or all does it cover? I mentioned Isfet, Ragnarok, and Pantheon. Is this covering all of those settings?
Yeah, so the initial offering for the RPG covers Pantheon and Ragnarok. Isfet is sort of lingering in the background at the moment, hopefully something we're going to visit down the line. And it's probably important to say at that point that what we're talking about here is two separate settings. So you can get the Pantheon book and just play in ancient Greece. You can get the Ragnarok book. You can just play in an ancient Norse setting. It's not like a standardized, one setting covers all. So they are separate product lines, but they're completely adjacent. They share a common rule system, and they can be merged if you're a creative GM who wants to do that as well.
Great. And you mentioned getting the book, but I know you also have a bunch of other things you can get in this campaign, the miniatures and all that. As far as the way that's structured, what does this use from the board games and the miniatures that you get? I guess it's kind of an all-encompassing question, but what can you utilize for the RPG from the existing board games that you already have, and or what is being offered that you can get in the campaign if you don't have those games?
Sure, yeah. So alongside the two core books, we'll be producing two really stunning Games Master screens, and they will ship along with two separate campaigns that can be played straight out of the box, so to speak. In terms of what can be used if you're an existing Mythic Battles board game player, pretty much everything. We went quite deep into allowing existing owners of the Mythic Battles board game to utilize their components. So the boards, the battle boards themselves, we utilize those in the adventures, and you can use the actual terrain rules from the board game in the RPG. All the minis are completely compatible. The dice themselves from the board game are used, and the dice mechanics are based on those board game dice. So pretty much if you own, one of these games, 95% of the contents of those boxes can be utilized as part of the RPG. At the same time, if you don't own them, you're not forced into buying them. Game can be played completely without them, using regular D6, playing Theatre of the Mind like many RPG groups do. And for people that don't want to dive deep into the board game side, we'll have boxes of miniatures, packs of maps, and that kind of thing available for people that just want the components needed to stick on the table for the RPG. The key dice mechanic is directly taken from the Mythic Battles board game. So that was a dice mechanic that was well loved by players of the board game, and when I got involved, one of Monolith's first asks was, can we investigate using those board game dice mechanics? It uses D6s that are numbered from 0 to 5 rather than 1 to 6. Effectively, there's a blank side where the 6 would be. Dice rolls of a 6 are therefore always disregarded, and each dice in the pool that's rolled can be used either for the number that's shown on the dice or discarded to add 1 to another dice that's in the pool, thus potentially stacking up to a larger number. It's a pretty straightforward system that the board game has proven has a lot of versatility, and by taking that and building on it, we've been able to build out what we believe to be a pretty robust RPG system that has a few nods to some classics, but in essence is quite a unique experience. The one thing that's really important, I think, to note that backs up that dice mechanic and that really sets the system apart is that a games master will never need to roll dice when running a game of Mythic Battles RPG. So the control of outcomes is always in the hands of the players, kind of emphasizing the heroic aspects of the setting.
Okay.
So if a player wants to achieve something, they're going to roll for success. If an NPC wants to achieve something, the players will roll to oppose them and stop them, as opposed to a games master rolling for success. And this was really, really well liked in playtesting, and a lot of very excited people over it. And we're, feeling pretty happy with how this has all come out.
Yeah, also for the dice mechanics, something which was very loved by board gaming players, which weren't used to like skirmish game, which is like Mythic Battle was at first, is actually you will have a difficulty set by the game master for doing a task or a check, and sometimes you're like a bad luck player, and so it can be pretty annoying to play when you never succeed on what you want to do, where you when you're supposed to be strong. Sorry, and the fact that you can burn dice just to add value to other dice makes that if you're supposed to be strong somewhere, you will be strong, obviously. So it's something which put away a lot of negativity you can have sometime when you're playing game with dice. And can still bring to some pretty epic moment. As Chris said, I mean, you can have like exploding dice and having something like doing very unique and epic moment during the game you will be playing. So, but the setting also is something we were very happy with what we did for the product, because obviously everyone has a certain part of knowledge about the mythology and a certain way of viewing it. And Chris and the team really were going very, very deep to make that shine with a particular setting, meaning anything existing in like Pantheon and Ragnarok is like going way above what you could learn in any mythology book you could read. I mean, the world is really unique. Like Pantheon, for example, it's like post-apocalypse. So it's like a totally different Greece that you can think about if you are just going for the normal one. And like it will talk more to RPG players, but like games like in the World of Darkness, like Vampires the Masquerade, for example, the game has a lot of meta plot, as we called it, which is like a lot of stuff happening behind the scenes. Like every god has some particular motive, and not all of them are like very happy to be together. So I mean, there's a lot of stuff people will know by reading the book, and players will have an opportunity to influence what will be happening in the setting as soon as they'll be doing more and more scenario with the game.
Excellent. Thanks so much for joining us, Shep, and we'll be right back.
Thank you.
Well, that about wraps it up. 4 exciting campaigns. Just a quick recap. We have Champions of Rokugan, we have Mythic Battles, the RPG, we have Reichbusters Reloaded, and then we have Berserk. Speaking of which, by the way, I know we mentioned the launch date for Reichbusters is going to be April 2nd, but when are these other campaigns launching?
Yeah, it's pretty simple. Champions of Rokugan is planned for Q2, Mythic Battle RPG for Q3, and Berserk for Q4.
Perfect. So you have a busy year with a campaign basically every single quarter to go through. Anything else anyone should know as far as these campaigns or the year or anything?
Yeah, actually, thing is, last year was pretty silent, I would say, for Monolith. I mean, it was not like crazy big, contrary to this year. But thing is, after the All Quest campaign, we changed our whole process because, as you know, time can be tense for the crowdfunding. So now we are only launching project when all the development is done, which means it allows us to deliver in a year, or like could be 30 months. But I mean, you get the point. Like last year, we had like 4 campaigns, for example. We're in March, and we currently already have delivered both this year, and the 2 other are already in production. So the thing is, it allows us to be like really, really safe for people, knowing like there will be like no huge surprise. At least if there's one, it won't be coming for us. I mean, we can control virus and stuff, but for that part, I mean, we're pretty strong and very happy with the new way of working we're doing. So, I mean, all this wave of project we'll be doing this year in the same vein would be delivered in a year or a little below.
Well, perfect. Well, it's been a busy day. 4 campaigns in Monolith Revolution. Make sure to go ahead and check them all out. Some will have follower gifts, some not. We'll have links to everything in the page as well, so you can easily access whatever you need to. And Giles, thanks so much for joining us today to go over all of these. From those, I know you mentioned you're most excited about Champions of Rokugan. For me, I think it has to be a bit more towards Reichbusters Reloaded. Like I mentioned, I'm a personal fan of the original, and I'm excited to see the development. But honestly, all of these sound, well, I'm not a huge RPG player, but all of these in general sound fantastic, and I'm very excited for them.
Thank you, Alex. My pleasure.